What was great about Brandon Lee is that, yeah, people could just say he's the son of Bruce Lee. And right then and there, you could be proud of that notion. He could have used that to ride the coattails of his dad's success, of his dad's legendary popularity, and use it as a moniker to get in easy in the action film business, in the movie business, and whatever business he decided to do so. But what was commendable about Brandon Lee was that he wanted to make it on his own. In fact, he didn't want to rely on his father's name. He didn't want to be called, oh, here's the son of Bruce Lee. He wanted to be called Brandon. And I think Brandon Lee did make it on its own. And unfortunately, it was a very short career that I wish could have gone much, much longer because the films he was a part of I very much love.
I think that he was a breath of fresh air. At that time in the early 90s, the martial arts and the martial arts films were popular once again. You had Jean Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal ruling the box office at the time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers were ruling the television market at the time. Chuck Norris was still going strong. You know, he was doing a couple of films, and then he also would do Walker, Texas Ranger. And at that time, again, the martial arts were very popular in terms of movies and also in real life. And I think Brandon was a breath of fresh air. Now, again, like I just said, Steven Seagal and Jean Claude Van Damme were the kings of the box office in terms of the martial arts films at that time. And as much as I like those guys, I think Brandon was kind of a step above them. Steven Seagal, not discrediting him, but it was basically the same movie over and over again. You know what I'm saying? He was a cop, or he was a soldier, he was this or that. Someone he knew died, he had to go get revenge. Van Damme, spread out into different categories. He did martial arts, straightforward martial arts films. He did science fiction films. He did, gunplay films. Van Damme definitely spread his criteria out, which was great. But Brandon, I think, was very special. And I think that, again, he was above those guys because he was an actor first. And Brandon had said that numerous times, whether it be in an interview or whatever. Brandon had always ascertained that he was an actor first. He didn't, when he was young, obviously his father taught him martial arts, but after his father passed away, he got out of it. And he didn't get back into the martial arts until his late teens. He focused on acting before. He went in school plays and made home movies and stuff. So Brandon, I think, focused more on his acting ability, which was great. And I think, given a few more years, I think he would have been a leading man in Hollywood.
His father, Bruce Lee, was such a big figure in the martial arts genre of the 70s before he sadly passed away, that it's one of those instances that if Brandon decided to get into film, he's going to have big shoes to fill, and he's going to have his father, or should I say his father's shadow, looming over him to the point where it's going to be, why bother, or he's going to have his work cut out for him. And it's more or less that second one, that he had his work cut out for him. But, he started slow. He started with some minor roles. He was in the film Crime Killer, and then he was in Legacy of Rage and Laser Mission, and he was also in 2 spin-offs of the 70s show Kung Fu the movie, and Kung Fu the Next Generation, which was a pilot. So he paid his dues a little bit before they put him in his first starring roles. And it's with those first roles that it seems that he, broke into the business and showed people, I may be Bruce Lee's son, but you don't have to use that as a novelty on me. I can hold my own. And of course, by the time he got to The Crow, he more than proved that he could hold his own in film. And if he had been able to continue his career after that, I have a feeling this is theoretical, he might have been able to carve a bigger legacy than his father, but that's hypothetical. We're never going to have the answer for that. But if The Crow was any indication of how the future of his career was going to go before the accident, I have a feeling that we'd be talking a little bit more about Brandon Lee and a little less about his father. Now, we'd still be talking about his father because, you know, big part of the 70s kung fu martial arts genre. But it'd be like, yeah, he was his father, Bruce. Bruce is the father of Brandon Lee. And then, however the career could have gone, it would have gone from there. But he definitely would have continued to develop his persona.
He seemed like he was just a very focused, determined young man. You know, he just wanted to be the best that he could be as a actor and as a martial artist. And, you know, he just seemed like a very sincere, wonderful person. You know, there's a interview with him on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He's on there telling stories and talking about how this guy broke into his house and how he fought him off. And, you know, Brandon just seemed like a very genuine person, you know, just a very nice person, genuine person. You know, there was nothing phony about him. No ego. No ego. Again, like I said earlier, you know, if he really wanted to do it the easy way, he could have just said, fuck it, and, you know, opened up a Bruce Lee martial arts school and have him be the teacher, or, you know, make, you know, chopsaki Hong Kong films. You know, Brandon could have easily just taken the easy way out, but he didn't. You know, he wanted to leave his own mark and be his own person. And yeah, from interviews like the Jay Leno show and the Tonight Show, and different stuff, you could just tell that he was just this determined, smart young guy who just wanted to make movies, who just wanted to make action films and other movies and let people know that he was Brandon Lee, and that's who he was going to be. He wasn't going to be a carbon copy of his dad. He wasn't going to be some regular karate guy, got lucky for a couple movies, and then that would be it. No, he wanted people to know who he was and leave a lasting impression.
And he had all the goods. He had all the right tools. He had the whole package. He had the looks, he had the talent, he had acting ability, he had charisma, he had the ability to run off one-liners and funny dialogue, and also be very, very well established in martial arts. Showdown To Little Tokyo, to me, is one of the most underrated buddy cop films out there. When it came out, it did not do much of anything because the studio did not give it any amount of marketing, didn't really give it a chance. They only released it in 100 or so theaters, if that. They gave it a very small release schedule, not that many theaters, so people couldn't even see it if they wanted to. And I know the cut of the film, Mark L. Lester, the director who did Commando, Class of 1984, Class of 1990, a lot of material was cut out, and that's why he's not the most happy with the cut of the film. And even on Blu-ray, it doesn't get the respect it deserves. I mean, you got a Warner Archive Blu-ray. Warner Archive, when they were doing DVDs, they were glorified DVD-Rs. And there's no extra features. But a lot of people I talk to about Showdown To Little Tokyo, they say one thing: it's fun. It's a very fun movie. It's a very funny movie. It's a very short film. It's only an hour and 17 to an hour and 20 minutes. And when you watch the film, it goes by like a breeze. It's very fast. It's very funny. Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee, I think they worked very well together. They had great chemistry with each other. Brandon Lee did wonderful as the wisecracking cop. And they had a good camaraderie between each other. When the action scenes happened, they were well choreographed. Both are martial artists that knew how to deliver the goods. They're very proficient. You have a very solid score. You have a great bad guy with Cary Hayayuki Tagawa, who is Shane Sun in Mortal Kombat. And whenever I looked at Showdown To Little Tokyo, I'm like, you know, around the same time period, they did a movie based on Double Dragon. And it sucked. It sucked ass. Yeah, Marta Costas, who's a great martial artist and actor, but he couldn't do anything with that. You had fucking Scott Wolf, Robert Patrick with crazy hair, and magic medallions and crappy CGI, and it was a piss poor movie. But Shonen Little, when you look at Showdown Little Tokyo, that's the real Double Dragon. I always thought of that. If you change a couple things, it's two guys going against these gangs to rescue the girl, which is Tia Carrera, and you change a couple things. That's Double Dragon the movie. Showdown in Little Tokyo is the real Double Dragon movie.
But Showdown in Little Tokyo, I think, is a very fun, underrated martial arts action film. I think Brandon's not really the star of the film. It's more of Dolph Lundgren's movie. But Brandon definitely steals the show. He has all the best one-liners. He has all the best fight scenes. And he has a great persona in the film. His charisma definitely shows. And I think a lot of people remember Showdown in Little Tokyo because of Brandon, not so much the other stuff. But, I mean, it's a great film in my opinion. I think it's a great early 90s action film. I really wish there was a special edition Blu-ray for it because there's a ton of deleted scenes for the film. I would love to hear a commentary track from the director, Mark Lester, who also did Commando. Also interviews with Dolph Lundgren and Tia Carrere and Cary Tagawa and all the other people involved with the movie. Showdown in Little Tokyo definitely deserves more. Warner Brothers did not give a shit about the film because they cut it down to 78 minutes, which is barely over an hour. And they dumped it in, I think, like 200 theaters in major cities, and that was it. And then they put the film out on video. And on video, it got a big reception. It was a popular video, particularly after Brandon had passed away. And also on cable, I know cable, like HBO used to run the movie quite a bit. And because of cable TV and video, which was a big outlet back in the day, people got to see this movie and was really most people's first glance of Brandon Lee. Most people probably had not seen Legacy of Rage or the Kung Fu TV movie and all that. But Showdown in Little Tokyo was the first exposure, at least in the United States, for Brandon Lee. And again, I think he steals the show. He's got tremendous charisma in the movie. He's got all the best one-liners.
It's a great vehicle to show that Brandon Lee could work with another person, Dolph Lundgren, that he can showcase great martial arts, but also a very fun sense of humor. And that he could be a team player, and he can hold his own. Dolph Lundgren had been in there at least a few years with Rocky IV, Red Scorpion, but Brandon Lee, he was a new guy coming in, and he could hold himself up just as well as Dolph Lundgren. And they made a very underrated buddy team. Not many people talk about those two, and not many people talk about the movie itself, but Showdown in Little Tokyo, I think, is a very underrated action classic, especially of its genre. And when it's a rainy night and you just want a quick, fast, action-packed, funny movie for an hour and 20 minutes or so, you get a lot of bang for your buck. There's a lot of action packed into a very small running time. And when I go to see an action movie, I want to be entertained. I get two likable leads. I get a great bad guy with Shane Soon himself. Tia Carrere did fine. The score fit the film like a glove. And fisticuffs, gunfights, witty banter. Tia Carrere get naked. What more do you want in a movie?
But Brandon has great fight scenes in the film. He gets a one-on-one at the end with Toshihiro Obata from the Ninja Turtle films, Master Tatsu, which is a fun fight. He's reading him his rights and kicking the shit out of him, and then he blows him up. I mean, come on. Great stuff. The ending, he's running around with an M16 shooting people, and, the bathhouse fight, he's kicking people's asses, and the club fight, he's flipping off of tables and everything. Brandon, he steals the show. People always, ask me about Showdown in Little Tokyo, and I'm like, it's Brandon Lee's movie. They're like, what do you mean? I said, he's got all, like I just said, he's got all the best one-liners. He's got the best fights in the movie. I mean, you can't go wrong with him in that movie. You can't go wrong with Brandon Lee in Showdown To Little Tokyo. And everyone else is great. Dolph Lundgren, I thought was great in the film. I really liked his character, how he was like this samurai cop type of guy. And Tia Carrere was one of her first movies. Kerry Tagawa was one of his first big movies. I thought he was great as a villain. I think the action's really well done. A lot of familiar faces, like Al Leong is in there, James Liu, so many recognizable faces in the movie. And again, the movie definitely deserves more. It is on Blu-ray in America, thank God. It's made on demand Blu-ray, but the quality is really good, and it's in widescreen, thank God. But unfortunately, there's no features. I think Showdown To Little Tokyo deserves features. Again, I know Warner Brothers did not care about the movie because they, again, edited to nothing and they dumped it in 200 theaters and that was it. But, I think there's more to be desired there. People love the film. Most people that I know enjoy the film and think it's a kind of an unsung classic. I will agree with that. It's an underrated film, in my opinion. And it's just a fun movie. It's just a fun martial arts action film. And, with those kind of movies, that's all I want, is to sit down for an hour and a half or however long the movie is and have fun. And Showdown To Little Tokyo is definitely a fun movie. No doubt about that.
Rapid Fire is my favorite film that Brandon Lee has starred in. I mean, granted, unfortunately, he didn't get to star in too many films. Laser Mission, which wasn't much. Legacy of Rage, which I barely remember. The Crow, which I liked. But Rapid Fire showed that he could be, to me, he could be a leading man in an action film. I think he was very well directed by Dwight H. Little, who had done the film Halloween 4. And I thought Dwight H. Little handled the action scenes very well. I think Brandon Lee, he had the leading man quality. He can act. He had charisma and presence. He was excellent in his martial arts sequences, but he had a good humanity to him. On the flip side, he had a good sense of humor.
The movie was written for him, which is awesome. It was originally known as Moving Target, but they changed the title to Rapid Fire, which I think is a better title, to be honest. And it's a great action film. I think it's just it cuts at a great pace. Dwight Little directed the film, who did Halloween 4 and also Marked for Death with Steven Seagal, amongst other films. I think the movie looks really good. I love how it takes place in Chicago. The action is top notch, from the opening credits where Brandon is like training, and it's like this like shutter effect, which looks really cool.
You have some very well done fight sequences in the finale when he fights folks like Al Leon. Very well established, well choreographed, no shaky cam, no CGI enhancements, no fast cuts, fast editing. It's what me and my friends look for in action scenes and action films. We want to be able to see what the hell's going on. We want to be able to appreciate the choreography that these people worked hard for. We want to marvel at the martial arts expertise on display, which Brandon Lee had to the 10th power, in my opinion. And he had just marvelous movements. I mean, the sequence where he goes into this big gunfire where the bad guys are shooting at the cops who are outside, and Brandon Lee is taking these guys out one by one, and there's a moment where a guy has him from behind. He does this beautiful flip and gets the shotgun and shotguns a guy across the way. Beautiful shot. And I thought the bad guy was a lot of fun. I believe the actor's name was Nick Mancuso. I could be wrong on that. I can't remember what the name of the villain was, but he did a good job.
That generation of people that grew up watching these type of movies, these old school action films, whether it would be on cable TV or renting the videos from Blockbuster or what have you. The reason why people love movies like Rapid Fire is because it's all there. It's all in camera. It's all practical action. It's no CGI. It's none of that stupid bullshit that they put in movies nowadays. And Brandon worked so hard, and also with The Crow, which I'll obviously get into. But Brandon worked so hard on this movie. He was the one of the fight choreographers on Showdown Little Tokyo. He helped out a little bit, but this one he was right there. He was choreographing all the action scenes, all the fight scenes. He helped, you know, with other aspects of production. From uh, what I've heard from people that have worked with him, he was just a sponge basically. He was trying to learn how to make better movies, and just try to be a better actor and martial artist and everything. Like, he was always learning and trying to help out, and always positive, and just everyone that I've met over the years, whether it be through conventions or speaking online or whatever, have nothing but positive things to say about Brandon Lee. And he worked hard, and and a lot of people also have commented on his acting. They said he was really into putting on a good performance and being a good actor and trying to get the best role out. And again, like I said earlier, I think that's what really separated him from everyone else from that time period, because he was more focused on putting on a good performance than the fight scenes, because he knew the fight scenes would be okay, because naturally gifted athlete, naturally gifted martial artist, and he knew that he wouldn't have to worry about that stuff. The acting was more important. And Rapid Fire, he's in the whole movie, putting on a good performance, talking about, the stuff with his dad, and good one-liners. It's believable. Like, you believe this guy, you believe everything he says. It's very convincing. He gets a love scene in the movie, which I know he joked about, because on the DVD there's some features from back in the day, but I wish, especially Rapid Fire. Like, Rapid Fire isn't even on Blu-ray. Like, come on, Fox or whoever owns the rights to the movie. Like, at least put it on Blu-ray. I would love to see an updated features, but I mean, I don't know if it'll ever happen. But I mean, at least put the friggin' movie on Blu-ray. Like, it definitely deserves that, at least. But Rapid Fire is just, in my opinion, it's his best movie. It's always been my favorite movie. And it's just a great action film. It delivers. The fight scenes are very well choreographed. I think the performances are very good. The soundtrack is good. I like the score. The two songs by Hardline, which Brandon was actually a fan of the band and asked them if they could contribute, the two songs for the movie, which is cool. And, Brandon was just really into this. He was really into the creative process and working hard to put this movie together. And it definitely shows. I think Rapid Fire is a well-made action film. It's definitely underrated, in my opinion. And, it's a standout at that time. In 1992, it really wasn't a big year for action films. You had Under Siege, which was the biggest action film of that year. And, Arnold didn't do anything that year. Van Damme did Universal Soldier, which is another great action film. But I think Rapid Fire kind of stands out because it was Brandon Lee. Brandon brought his own, personality and everything to the table, and it shows. It shows in his films. And Rapid Fire, I think, is the best representation of Brandon Lee. I think all the elements that made him who he was are in that movie.
Some great stunt work, like with the motorcycle when he's driving through this galleria and glass is breaking, and he's dealing with these bad guys, giving these beautiful kicks and punches, and extremely well done choreography that unfortunately is somewhat lacking in theatrical movies nowadays. I mean, once in a while you get thrown a bone, like John Wick 1 and 2, which is more gunplay than fisticuffs, but it has a little bit of that as well. But not as often as it was in the 80s and 90s. Plus, I love the song at the end, Hard Lines, I'll Be There. I think that's a perfect song for the ending of the film. Very underrated song. Really gets my adrenaline pumping when I hear that. It just makes me want to watch the film again. And Rapid Fire is a great flick. The Crow is one of those movies that is a very well done film. Alex Proyas had a wonderful visual look to the flick, has a great soundtrack. It has that comic book dark look that I wouldn't say is similar to a Tim Burton film, but it has that sort of dark vibe that sometimes you would see in those kind of movies. But at the same time, it wasn't too out there as opposed to Tim Burton. Brandon Lee did a wonderful job as Eric Draven, and the action scenes worked very well. Graham more gunplay than fisticuffs, but he had a few in there. You had good supporting roles by Ernie Hudson as a sympathetic cop who knew Brandon Lee's character, or the villains. I think the villains worked very well in the movie. I mean, you had Michael Wincott, who's a great actor. He was in the villain in Eddie Murphy's Metro. There's Tony Todd as well, and there were great supporting roles. And it was I had not read the comic book, but the story about a man who, him and his woman were murdered, and he comes back for revenge to set the wrong things right. And it is a well done movie, but it's one of those films that is very hard for me to watch. And it's a very ridiculous, silly notion, I understand, but it's one of those things where I get pissed at the movie as if it's a person. And the reason for that is, of course, for those who know, you already know how he passed away. It was on set, someone was supposed to check the gun, the prop gun, someone didn't check it properly, and Brandon Lee was killed. And there's that part of me that goes, if The Crow never existed, if the movie was never made, we would still have Brandon Lee. That the film wasn't made at all, no one would have died. Because that gun would not have been on set or whatever, and Brandon Lee would have been doing maybe Mortal Kombat or Rapid Fire 2 or who knows what other movies he would have done. And anytime I watch that film, and again, I know it's a very silly notion. Of course, the people making of it, they didn't know that was going to happen. It wasn't intended. It wasn't some conspiracy. It's just, sadly, that's what happens on a set. That's what happens on jobs. Any job you work at, there are people who have accidents, and sometimes it results in death. You have negligence, and sometimes it results in death, and that's what happened here. And again, it's not the Crow's fault, but at the same time, anytime I try to watch it, I go, man, if this movie was never made, if this movie never existed, Brandon Lee would still be alive. And so it's one of those films I don't really watch much. I rather prefer watching Rapid Fire, Showdown To Little Tokyo, and those are Brandon Lee films I prefer. So I give respect to the filmmaking and acting and action and soundtrack of The Crow, but there's that part of me just pissed at it, that it took Brandon away from us. Again, I know how stupid and dumb and silly and moronic that is, but that's just how I honestly feel. And I could lie, but what's the fucking point in lying? I know that sounds the dumbest thing, but it's just how I personally feel.
Most people will say that it's his best film. I think it's his most well-known film, and it's the one that obviously gets the attention for various reasons, But I love The Crow. I think it's one of my favorite comic book films. It's a great comic book film. It's the first R-rated one to get attention, because The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren didn't get a theatrical release or anything like that. As far as I know, it's the first R-rated one to get attention. It was a big hit when it came out, and I think it had to do with Brandon. It's a very dark movie, and it looks dark, which is great. I know that Brandon wanted to do the movie in black and white, which I think would have been badass, but unfortunately, they didn't do it that way. It's a very nihilistic movie, which I think works because that's how the comic was, and it's very close to the comic, the original Crow comic. Some little things have been changed here and there, but it's pretty much straightforward from the comic. I think that the action is very good. It's not a martial arts film. There's barely any martial arts in it. The only time there really is the big shootout in the Top Dollar's like building. There's a little bit of martial arts in that, but most of it's like street fighting stuff, and then it's all the shoot 'em up stuff. I think the supporting cast is great. You have Ernie Hudson, Michael Wincott, Tony Todd, so many great actors in the movie. The soundtrack kicks ass. I love the soundtrack. I really wish it would get a vinyl release. The Crow is just a great movie, and I do think it's underrated because, when it came out, it was a huge hit. Back then in '94, it was a big hit. And through cable and video and DVD and stuff, it's become a classic. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a cult classic. I mean, there's obviously, it does have that vibe to it because of being a comic book and everything. But I don't think it's a cult classic because it's well known. It's a very well known movie, and people know what happened and everything. But I just think it's a badass movie. And again, Brandon worked so hard on this movie because he wanted to get it right. He wanted to show people that he wasn't some karate guy. Again, he wasn't a kung fu guy. He was an actor who just happened to be good at martial arts. But this movie, had Brandon lived, I think it would have been a bigger hit, and people would have finally realized that, yeah, this guy is his own dude, his own person, and he deserves everything that he gets because he's proven it. James O'Barr, the author of the comic, when he first heard that Brandon Lee was going to do this, he was worried. He thought it was going to be some shitty direct-to-video action film, but he showed up and Brandon wore a coat, and he was quoting Edgar Allan Poe, and he was quoting the comic, and he knew that this was it. This was going to work. And from what I understand, him and Brandon became very close during the making of the movie, and he was obviously very upset about what happened and everything. But, I know that he speaks very glowingly of Brandon in the years that have passed. He says nothing but positive, like everyone that I've met and talked to and everything, and interviews and stuff. I've never heard a bad word about Brandon Lee. It's amazing for someone that only did really 3 big movies. It's very, very good to hear that about Brandon. But The Crow, it's just all the elements are there. Brandon, and on the Blu-ray, there's a commentary by the director Alex Proyas, who would go on to do Dark City and iRobot and a couple other movies. And he said on there, this was always Brandon's movie, and that man worked so hard to bring this movie to life, to bring The Crow to life, and it really sucks because I think, again, if he had lived and seen the movie come out, it would have been amazing. Who knows what possibilities would have opened up for Brandon, because this was the ticket. This was going to be his big time movie, and it would have led to so many other things. And it's really a shame that we had to lose him so early. But The Crow is a great film. I think the action is very well done. It's a great story. Brandon gives a knockout performance. Great supporting cast. The soundtrack kicks ass. I mean, I've reviewed his movies numerous times here on YouTube, and just kind of do a general thought is kind of tough. Just 'cause I love these movies so much, and I know I ramble about Brandon because I miss him. I wish he was still here, and I love his movies, and I watch his movies all the time, and it's a excuse my language, but it's a fucking shame. It really is, that we lost him, because he was just a good person and a great actor, and I would love to have seen all the wonderful stories that he would have told us throughout the years, But The Crow, kind of going back to The Crow, I just think it's a great movie. I remember catching parts of it on TV growing up, never seeing the whole thing, and then one time I finally just rented it from Blockbuster, and I'll probably watch it about 3 or 4 times before I took it back, and then I bought the DVD at my local FYE, and and all these movies, Showdown To Little Tokyo, Rapid Fire, I have them on VHS, DVD, Laserdisc, Blu-ray, I just love these movies. I can't get enough of them. But the Crow is the Crow. I love the Crow.
Well, if I were to make a list of favorite films of the 90s, favorite comic films of the 90s, and favorite comic films in general, The Crow would definitely be on there. Where in the 90s conversation it lies would depend on what other films are there, but for comics and for comic films of the 90s, it's a no contest. It'd probably be towards the middle or towards the top. It's one of those films that when you talk about, even if you talk about it to someone who's never seen it, they at least know the image, the makeup that was on Brandon Lee, the crow on his shoulder, the design of the characters, the sets. They at least know the imagery, even if they've never seen the film, and for good reason. It is that iconic and that cemented into pop culture history. I mean, it's so iconic and so cemented into it that even professional wrestler Sting has been lifting from it for the last 20 plus years. I mean, his gimmick is essentially a crow gimmick, even if there have been changes here and now, like changing the white for red makeup when he was in the Wolfpack and then going with the more Joker-esque makeup in TNA. But the whole aesthetic has been there the same. The brooding character, being up in the rafters, having a crow with him every now and then. It's there. The cinematography, excellent on this film. It has that comic booky vibe that was very in vogue around this time, especially when they were doing adaptations of the more pulp comic characters like the Shadow and the Phantom. But it adds a little bit to it, and it's a little bit more dark and gothic. It doesn't go as gothic as, say, Burton's take on Batman, more so in Batman Returns, but it still felt there, and it's balanced quite well with the live action interpretation. The special effects, especially for the time, how it uses CG to help recreate Brandon's face in the shots that they weren't able to do before his untimely passing. Great, it really does deserve it. Now, of course, there's all that deleted scene footage, which, of course, the few bits you can find online, it's not fully post-rendered, so there's that. But even those ones look pretty good, like the design of the cowboy. That's interesting. I mean, you can still tell it's a guy in a suit and all that, but that adds to the charm of it. And it does deviate from the comic in parts, but this is an example of where the deviations don't hurt the film, and in certain ways might actually add more to the film's story when you transfer it from page medium to a visual medium such as film.
When he passed away, it was shocking. It was sad. It wasn't even one of those things where the guy was doing drugs or the guy did this and that and got himself killed. No, the guy was making a movie, doing what he loves, and some idiot who was negligent. And I don't blame the actor who fired the gun. That was his job. His job was not the. He's not a gun expert. The person who was supposed to handling the props, it was their job. And that here's Brandon Lee working with people who you would think in a decent budget film are experts, know what the fuck they're doing, that they would make double, triple, and quadruple sure of weaponry, of firearms. And they didn't, and Brandon Lee died for it. And I feel really sorry for Brandon Lee. I felt really sorry for their family because they lost father slash husband, Bruce Lee, cut way before his prime. And now the same thing happened to the son, way before his prime. And it just fucking sucks. I go all on this big tangent, but it just, at the end of the day, it fucking sucks. That's the most blunt way to say it. That's the most blunt way, and it pisses me off that whoever was the fucking moron, idiot, numbskull, that was your job. That was your one job. Wasn't to do 50 other things and paint the set and direct the film and write the film. It was to check these firearms. You didn't do your job. You got someone killed. I don't know where that person is who worked on the props, the firearms, whoever. But I hope they got fired to the point of never working again in the business. Or the person retired. If people say, well, that's not fair. You know what? Fuck fair. It's not fair what happened to Brandon Lee.
It should never have happened. Whatever the case may be, it should not have happened. It's you know, it's stupid. It's really stupid that this happened because it's something that should have never ever happened. You know, Brandon should still be here with us today. And I was a baby when it happened. I was barely two. You know, I was just about 2 years old when it happened, and so I don't remember it happening. You know, but over the years, just hearing about it, and learning the tragic circumstances, it sucks. It really sucks because again, he should still be here making wonderful movies with us today. You know, it just his death has always bothered, and I never, I never knew him. I never met him. I don't know any members of the family. I mean, I've met people that have known Brandon Lee and worked with him, and of course, I always ask because I'm curious, to know about. I'm sure people ask all the time, but I'm just curious about him and what he did in his life and just how he was, because I mean, I'll never get to meet him in this lifetime. And it's just something the subject of Brandon Lee is just something I've always been curious about, you know. But it does bother me. It does upset me, talking about his passing, and just again, it should never have happened. Never. He should still be here. And I'm sure a lot of people will again agree with this statement, but if time travel was real, if we could go back and change things, I would definitely go back and fix that, amongst other things. But it's not right. It's really not right. Someone didn't do their job right. Someone whatever was jealous or envious or whatever. Again, we're not going to get into that, but the guy should still be here. It's stupid, really. It's stupidity, and that's why he's not here. If again, excuse my language, but it just fucking sucks. It really does. It really does. But it's something I don't really like to talk about. Again, I know I didn't know him. I never met him, but I don't know. I love his movies, and I loved his style of acting and his martial arts, and I just wish that we could have got more, just like everyone else. I wish we could have seen more of Brandon Lee, but we didn't. It just sucks. And one of the things on my bucket list is to visit the grave of him and his father. It's just something I feel I need to do with my life, and one of these days I will. I'll get up to Seattle and check out the where the Bruce Lee school was and some of the other landmarks and stuff. And I definitely want to visit their graves. It's just something that I have to do with my life, and one of these days I will. So we'll see. And Michael Massey, who played Fun Boy in the film, unfortunately, he is no longer with us as well. I know that people blamed him for what happened, and it was definitely not his fault. He had no idea what was in that weapon. No, there's no way that he could have known, And I know that he blamed himself, and it really messed him up. And I mean, it would anybody. I mean, you don't wake up in the morning expecting anything like that to happen. To be there and to be part of that, and it's just can't even imagine how the guy felt. But may God rest both of their souls. I know they're both gone now, but it's stupid how just people would just think of think that way, and think that he was the man to blame. He was not. It was not his fault, and it's a terrible burden that man had to carry for his whole life. But I hope that he made peace with himself and peace with whatever he believed in, and I hope that him and Brandon are up there now having a good time, together again. I hope that they're okay. I'm sure they are. But yeah, so I'm sorry, but I'm definitely done talking about that question.
should not have happened. There's a lot of things you can mark as tragedy that shouldn't have happened, but if you were to compile a list of it, Brandon Lee's passing should be on there. And for the simple reason is that there is no good reason that there should have been a bullet in that gun. For one thing, once they had filmed the scene where the bullet had got lodged into it, somebody should have gone on there, checked the gun, and make sure, okay, nothing in there, nothing in there. Oh, there's a bullet there. And then figured out either how to get it out, or if they couldn't, switch out the gun for that scene. Or if they couldn't, well, maybe not do that type of wide shot where the person's pointing it at Brandon, or if they were going to actually have to have it on film, put the camera at an angle to where the actor can point it and make it look like he's pointing it at Brandon, but it's off. I mean, even in the heat of the moment with a shot, you could have gotten up to the moment you got with one angle and then been like, all right, okay, cut, we're going to redo it, reset the angle, do that, and then just fix it in post and go from there. But no, they didn't do that. And it's another example of why, when you are making firearms and rounds for film, you don't take live rounds and modify them, because stuff like this will happen. Because even if there's no gunpowder in there, all it needs is that percussion and boom, forward. Gets enough momentum, goes right through, and this is what happened. Now, off the top of my head, I don't remember if they had a prop master or weapons master on set, but I don't believe they did. And this is the reason why. Even if you don't hire someone specifically for it, if there is somebody on set that knows their way around firearms, have them at least look it over beforehand. And I feel sorry for the actor who actually shot him. I know he, was having nightmares about it for ages, which I get. I mean, sometimes when you kill somebody on purpose, you're gonna be feeling bad for a while, but accidental like this, boy, I feel like no good reason for this to have happened. And of course, given the plot and nature of the film and the fact that an accident like this occurred on the set of it, that does add a little bit to the whole vibe and the whole legend behind the film, where like a film about two lovers that were killed on mischief night, and one of the actors playing the lead dies in a sad accident while filming one of those scenes. It's one of those things that, like, is there some type of curse about this? Because we all know the curse about how his dad died and then he died filming a film, the whole curse of the Lee family. That's just one of those things I think just pops up just because people like talking about it, and because it just seems to have that weird little coincidence that when you combine it with the fact they both were filming films at the time and the nature of the Crows plot, that people just love to build their own thing about it. Which, of course, it's nothing more than just a coincidence, but it's one of those ones that's like stranger than fiction. You couldn't write this stuff.
I think if Brandon Lee had lived, The Crow would still have been a big hit, because I think that is a good film. People would have taken notice, like, wow, look what this guy did. He already had projects that he was thinking of doing. Mortal Kombat as Johnny Cage, which Lyndon Ashby did a great job in that. Brandon Lee, though, would have been great as Johnny Cage. And that film was a box office hit, so that was a lot of solidified him more as an actor who's in a hit film. And so we looked at, well, Rapid Fire did, not too bad. And then The Crow did well. And then Mortal Kombat did well. Let's give him some more opportunities. Let's give him Rapid Fire 2. There was talk of that. I think the plot was what led to the plot in Die Hard with a Vengeance. And as for what he could have done after, the sky would be the limit. Maybe he would have done more action films. Maybe people would have given him a chance to do bigger films, or work with bigger actors, work with people like Stallone, Schwarzenegger, or work with other bigger movies. A film with a much bigger budget. Films that would open up in the summer, and then the sky would have been the limit as to what he could have done. And maybe he would have gone to directing, like his dad did with Return of the Dragon. Who knows? Maybe if it went the route of Jeff Speakman, Jeff Wincott, all these guys who made some really good films, but they didn't go too far. Maybe he would have done films direct to video. Maybe he would have worked behind the scenes on choreography. Maybe he would have opened up a school like his dad did and teach people Jeet Kune Do. To me, though, the guy had enough talent. The sky was the limit. And it would have been great to see him in a film like The Expendables. People can think whatever they want in those movies, but that guy would have been... Like, if it was him and the Jason Statham part, and I like Jason Statham, but it was if him in that part and working off all those guys, and I think we missed a lot of good movies, a lot of good more short sequences, a lot of good one-liners, a lot of good material, and more importantly, his family did not need to suffer that loss as well. The loss of Bruce Lee was hard enough. Father, husband. Adding Brandon Lee was not needed, not wanted, and to his friends and his family, I couldn't imagine what they went through. Anger, pissed off, sadness, heartbreak, all that stuff. But as for where he would be today, I don't know. But I think we could have seen a lot of good stuff from him.
I know that he was supposed to do a sequel to The Crow. He had signed on to do that, and the story was going to be he was going to be trapped on Earth, and he was going to be mortal, and he had to figure out how to get back to heaven or purgatory or wherever. So that would have been an interesting storyline there. I know he signed on to do a sequel to Rapid Fire. That would have been cool to see. I don't know what the details of the story were or what they planned to do with that, but it would have definitely been interesting to see those characters come back together and take on another adventure. The rumors are that he was supposed to be Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, but I don't know if that's just a rumor, if that's actual, consideration for anything. I know there people have made comparisons to the Matrix, like Brandon would have been a cool Neo. I agree. I think he would have been cool to play that type of character. That would have been interesting to see. And I think, Brandon, again, he loved making action films, but I know he wanted to branch out. I could have definitely seen him be in dramatic films, maybe some romantic films, maybe some comedies would have been interesting. I think he also, in my opinion, would have directed. I think he would have moved on to directing films. That would have been really cool. But I think he would have kept making action films because he enjoyed them. I don't know, like career-wise, what would have happened. Maybe he would have moved into the direct-to-video market. Probably not because of his name. But who knows? But if he were still alive today, I think he would have still been making action films, maybe even directing them and moving on into dramatic films, and maybe, again, some romantic stuff would have been interesting to see. But I think, again, with the success of The Crow, I think he would have skyrocketed into superstardom and would have done many types of other movies, whether it be action films or science fiction films or dramatic films. I think Brandon would have moved on, again, into just, other stuff, other types of movies, and, it would all been good. It'd been good to see him try different things. I think that's what would have happened. In some other world, it would have happened.
It's sad that he passed during this, but to add to the tragedy, this was just when I feel, looking at everything, his career was just beginning to pick up. He had done those action movies before being cast in The Crow, and then he went to do this, and you watch his performance in the film with the scenes that he actually was able to film before he was shot, and you could see an excellent actor there. I feel, had he not died in this film and actually been able to complete it the way they wanted, even if the film would not have the same type of following it does now, isn't looked back on as fondly as it is now, because this is a what if scenario here. You got to think about how things could change there. I mean, some of the special effects would not have been applied. It might still have a following, it just wouldn't be quite the same and have that bit of tragic nuance. But I have a feeling that within at least the next 10 years, at least by the mid 2000s, Lee would have been nominated, if not have won, some type of major acting award, be it Golden Globe, Oscar, one of the other ones, maybe even a Saturn. Because he was starting to come into his own as an actor. He might have done a couple more of those martial arts action films after this one, but I have a feeling they would have started bringing him drama films that might have had some action scenes in it. And of course, down the line, he would have been in probably some more comic book related films. Who knows? He might have actually been approached at one point to be in The Matrix if he had lived. You never know. It would have been definitely different than what Keanu did, and would have been interesting. It's one of those what-if-isms. But then he might have also been in some films that are not as good. It's one of those things. You do good films, you do bad films. I don't know if Walken actually said this, but actually it was Christopher Lee, I think that said this. The trick is to not be bad in them. So he might have done some ones. Some of those weird films from the early to mid 2000s, he might have been in a couple of those. Then he might have been in some other big films, like he could have played a character in the MCU further down the line. He could have been in some of the other big film series. It's one of those things we'll never truly know because there's a lot of what if about it. But we do know he would have made more films, and considering his career would have lasted a lot longer, sans anything else major happening to him, I think it's safe to say that eventually Brandon's star would have outshone and eclipsed his dad's. I mean, his dad, Bruce Lee, would still have that legacy being an excellent martial arts actor, broke some ground there, had excellent film moments, I mean the nunchuck moment. But then after a while, Brandon, his star would have gone up a little bit higher. It would just been a matter of time. Right about now, because of what happened with Brandon, they're probably like Bruce like right here, Brandon like right there, a little bit under. Depending on how you view things, some might put Brandon a bit higher. Having not watched any of Bruce's films, I can't really say it for certain, so I'm just going based off of that. It's just one of those things that would have been a matter of time. Not to say that that's, a shot against Bruce, but it's one thing to keep in mind. And I have a feeling if you could somehow chat with Bruce Lee's spirit, he probably would have, in this what-if scenario, he'd probably been like, that's my boy. What will Brandon Lee's legacy be? Well, because of the sad nature of what happened, The Crow is going to be the main thing people are going to talk about. Him dying on the set of The Crow, all the what-ifs that could have been if he had lived, his great performance in there, and the fact that he was cut down in the prime of his career. He could have advanced and, like I mentioned earlier, won awards or just been nominated for them, or even if he wasn't, just be beloved by his fandom. And then all the different characters he could have played, the different nuances he could have brought to characters that we've seen other actors interpret. But without all that what-ifism, legacy is just going to be the sad, tragic nature of this, and the fact he was cut down too early. And of course, the films he made before this are all going to be part of his legacy as well. See him start in those ones and build up, and then see in this one. But then that thing is always going to be in the back of your head. The two most dangerous words in the English language, no matter what context you're using them in. What if?
There's not much out there for Brandon in terms of media. There's no official documentary. There's no, there's really, The Crow has some features. Rapid Fire has some features, but people want more. People want to hear more about Brandon. There's been no books written about him, no nothing. There's a E! True Hollywood Story special, which I'm sure is here on YouTube. But that's about it. There's really not much, and it's a shame. And I think there should be more. I think there should be a documentary about his life. I think there should be more extra features for the movies that he was in. And, maybe a book or two about his life would be interesting. There's really not much out there, which is a shame. I think there should be. But I think his legacy will be that he was a great actor and a great martial artist, in my opinion. And people will always remember Brandon Lee. You know, they will remember movies like The Crow and Rapid Fire and Showdown To Little Tokyo. And again, I've never heard anything negative about Brandon. It's all positive. Even if people don't like his movies or don't like his acting, they don't say anything bad about it. It's just, that's not my kind of movie. That's not my kind of, but it's all positive. I've never heard anything said bad about him. And I think now people are getting away from the notion that he was just Bruce Lee's son. I think people have finally gotten away from that, because for a long time, that's all I ever heard. Oh, yeah, Bruce Lee's son. Oh, yeah, I know, yeah, but you don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, again, people, I think, now are starting to understand that he was his own person. He proved that he was his own person. Again, like I said, he could have just opened up a fucking Bruce Lee, excuse my language, martial arts school, or did shitty movies in Hong Kong, shitty chopsocky films, that kind of shit. Or he could have just sat on his ass and did nothing. But no, he went out there, he worked hard, he gave us 3 great action films, and then some other stuff that if you want to check it out, go ahead. The origins, the beginning of Brandon's career. But he left his mark on the world. It absolutely sucks that he left us too soon. It sucks that he's no longer here. I think we would have had wonderful movies and a great career from him. I think he would still be making movies today. He would have advanced his martial arts. I know that as well. And yeah, I think he would still be here with us today, pun intended, alive and kicking. But I think he would still be here, proving once again that he was Brandon Lee. He was his own person. That's about it.
It's one of those things where I think the legacy of Brandon Lee, it's not that he's in the shadow of his father. In my opinion, he's standing right next to his father, side by side as equals to his father. And that he, even with the short amount of work he was able to put out, it showed that he had talent, charisma, ability, and even with the short amount of work, he made an impression on me, my friends, other fans of the guy, other fans of these films. And once again, she somehow sees us some way, somehow, some form out there. Again, you're not in the shadow of Bruce Lee, you're equal to your father. And that's his legacy. Not many people can get out of a shadow that big, but in my opinion, he was able to.
When I'm lonely